Hi, Doug. I know everyone's on mute right now, so I'm just going to keep it that way. Hi, everyone who's joining. We're having everyone start on mute for the beginning of this, and then we'll open it up for Q&A later. Welcome, everyone. We're going to obviously wait a little bit longer to get started. Everyone is starting on mute just at the start here. I hope everyone's okay given this windstorm, thunderstorm that rolled through. I know a lot of people have reached out to me saying that they don't have power in their neighborhood. So unfortunately, with this timing, it looks like we're going to have a lower attendance than we otherwise would. So just a few more minutes and we'll get started. Thank you all. Welcome, folks. I really appreciate everyone joining tonight. I just want to let you know that everyone's going to start in mute when you join this meeting. So just please stay on mute if you can, just through the first presentation, and then we'll open it up after that. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. I hope everyone is okay given the recent wind and rainstorm that came through. I know there's a tree down in the back of my yard, and I know from several folks who texted me that whole neighborhoods may not have power right now. So unfortunately, the RTM attendance will be lower than expected tonight, but I hope everyone's okay. We'll get started in just a few minutes.
It's always tough doing these meetings when no one else has their videos on because you're just staring at and just looking at, it's like a blank wall of just like names across. Maybe that's just me, Andrew.
No, I hear you. All right, it's almost 7:02. I'm going to give 2 more minutes, and at 7:04 on the dot, I promise to begin. And again, for those of you who are just joining us, we have several individuals in the waiting room right now. I just want to say I hope everyone's okay and safe with the windstorm. I know some neighborhoods, some individuals have lost power. Ben Barrett, who's the chair of the select board and who's a member of the Housing Partnership Committee, actually has several trees down and has no power, and so he won't be able to make this. So we're adjusting on the fly as best we can. So bear with us, and at 7:04 we'll begin. It's a great turnout so far, despite the weather complications. And I really appreciate you all taking time out of your Wednesday night to join us tonight. A few more individuals are joining as we speak. I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm going to go ahead and start this event, this virtual forum. And just so you all know, I'm going to be both the host in terms of letting people in, monitoring the Zoom guests, but I'm also the chair of the Walpole Housing Partnership. My name's Andrew Flowers. I'm also an RTM in Precinct 4. I really appreciate all of you, whether you're RTMs or from the public, taking the time to come out tonight. And again, one last time I'll say it, I hope everyone's safe from that recent windstorm. I know a lot of people wanted to come and just texted me that they can't. So let's get started. I'm going to start with a very quick, just few-minute presentation about the purpose of this meeting, future meetings, future public hearings, and some basic ground rules before we get started in a great presentation from Ashley Clark. So let me share my screen if I can figure out how to do that. Okay. Hopefully everyone can see this presentation. Can I get a confirmation? Everyone can see this? Great. All right. I got thumbs up. Thank you, folks. Thank you, folks. Really quick. This is a virtual public forum on Articles 19 and 20, just to give some background and dive into the technical details on inclusionary zoning and the housing trust. Again, this is put on by the Walpole Housing Partnership. Really quickly, here's the agenda. I'm going to talk about the purpose. I'm going to give some ground rules. Ashley Clark, the Community and Economic Development Director, is the keynote speaker here. She has a presentation. And then, as I'll explain in a second, we're going to start once Ashley's done, we're going to allow you to really engage. We're going to start with questions from RTMs, and I'll explain that, and then we'll end with questions from the public. So what is the purpose? The purpose of this public forum is to really educate and answer questions about the technical details of Articles 19 and 20. This is a lot of text, so it's a lot of complexity. We get that, so we're trying to make an extra effort to educate and answer questions and be transparent, be as transparent as possible. We want RTMs and the public, their constituents, we want everyone to really be clear about what we're voting on at town meeting for Articles 19 and 20. So there will be other forums. The point of this purpose slide is to say there will be other forums for debate. I don't want to say that there won't be debate tonight. I just want to emphasize that next week, the Finance Committee is having a virtual public hearing on Tuesday at 6 p.m. The Planning Board is having an in-person public hearing next Wednesday at 7 p.m. at the high school. I would really suggest it tonight, if you would, just, again, I really have good intentions here. Please hold your comments or your arguments, whether for or against, hold those comments until all the participants have asked questions. That's really the intention here. Is Ashley Clark is really brilliant. The select board and the housing partnership have been working for over a year on these two bylaws. We want to make sure everyone gets their questions out, and then we can have some debate, hopefully next week. That's where it really matters, but we'll see about it later tonight. So that's the basic purpose of this meeting. Again, please show up next week at the two virtual public hearings to engage in debate, express your opinion. But tonight, let's focus on answering questions. So here's the ground rules that we're asking you to abide by tonight. Really focus on your questions for the two bylaws and maybe hold your comments. So not so much your comments. Again, there's going to be ample opportunity 2 times next week and at town meeting. So let's be respectful. That's the second ground rule here. Let's just be civil, no interruptions, no personal attacks. I want to get this out of the way. I hope this doesn't happen, but after one warning, participants who don't abide by these ground rules will be removed from this meeting. Another ground rule, I'm asking everyone just to mute yourself until Ashley has finished her presentation. And again, when we start questions, I really want to prioritize RTMs who will be voting on this, but I absolutely want to engage with the public. So if there are non-RTMs, people who are not RTMs on this call, that is fantastic. I really want to hear from you, but let's just give priority when we do the Q&A to the RTMs. state your conflict of interest if you have any. So in other words, if you're a representative of a developer, or if you own a large parcel of land in town and are interested in developing it. Again, I'm not trying to demonize anyone. You can ask your question, but just state that conflict of interest. I think that would help with transparency, because that's what tonight is all about education and transparency. Finally, for the Q&A, the way just logistically this will work is either I or Audrey Grace, who's also a member of the Walpole Housing Partnership, will be the host of this meeting, and we will be monitoring the chat. And there's also, at the bottom of your Zoom screen, if you're on a desktop version of Zoom, there's an ability to ask a question, or there should be. If not, we'll figure that out as we go along. So hopefully either through raising your hand or typing in the chat, we're gonna take your Q&A. So that's it. I wanna leave our emails here, but again, we're gonna come back to this once we've had Ashley give her presentation. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. And Ashley, are you ready to begin your presentation?
Sure.
Great. I'm gonna pull that up, and then when it shows up, you can kick it off.
Okay. So I don't have a big formal presentation. I pulled a bunch of slides together that I've used for previous presentations that we've done on this. I thought maybe just kind of going through them really quickly before we get into the questions would be helpful, but I was asked to be here tonight to answer questions about the bylaw. So I will go through these slides very quickly, and maybe people can kind of remember, oh, I had a question about that. So hopefully she can pull that slide up later. That's really the goal of this. So I guess, Andrew, if you could share, I can't share my screen.
Yes, I am just figuring that out as I go right now. I apologize. Just
Andrew,
1 second.
Can you make me and Ashley a co-host?
Yes. How do I do that? Excuse my technological ignorance.
Click on participants in the bottom.
Yeah.
Then click on our name, or go to our names and
Yeah.
click on more.
Yeah.
And it says make co-host.
I just see make host.
All right, make me the host and I'll make everyone a co-host.
Awesome.
I'll try at least.
All right, so Audrey is now the host. I have Ashley's presentation.
All right.
If you could make Ashley a co-host, that would be great, because she can just give her presentation. Otherwise, I'll go slide by slide.
Or someone could just go through and click for me, and then I'll just talk at that speed. That would be perfect.
Yeah, that's probably it, because this doesn't have a co-host function. Sorry, Andrew.
Thank you all for your patience. I hope everyone again is safe here from that storm that just swept through. So Audrey, if you want to, yeah, okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and situate Ashley's presentation. I've got it right here. All right, we are ready to begin. Just 1 second.
Hi.
All right. Hi, everyone. Can you see this presentation that says Fall Town Meeting, Inclusionary Zoning Bylaw?
I saw that 2020 and I had to look at it a dozen times because I can't believe we're still in 2020. Is it really still 2020? Is that still happening?
All right. Ashley, you'll just tell me when you want to go to the next slide.
Sure. You can kind of go to the next slide. Okay. So I'm just going to really quickly go through some of the background. I'll touch base on some of the components of the IZB and the FAQs. Next slide. So just real quickly, 40B requires that a community is at least 10% of its housing stock. The policy, the goal of the IZB is to try and keep pace locally with development so that we can get to that 10% and be able to say no to 40B projects. So an IZB is one tool that towns use to take back that local control over affordable housing. So next slide. Here's just an overview of some recent housing developments in the town. Next slide. This is a comparing and contrasting of what you get with a 40B application and an inclusionary zoning application. The most, I think, important takeaway here is that, at least from talking with folks, is that multifamily housing under 40B can go in any zoning district. Under an inclusionary zoning, it's only allowed where it's currently allowed. So next slide. Just again, multifamily buildings can go in any zoning district. Next slide, please. This is an example of the density that you can get under a 40B project. So this is about 1/2 an acre parcel. Will you go to the next slide, please? And this is what was proposed under the 40B. So that house is an existing, I believe it was a 1 or a 2 family home, and the person bought a front lot and a rear lot and then created an L-shaped building that wrapped around this single family home. So just kind of demonstrating what a blunt instrument 40B is. And I think that's an argument why people want to have an IZB, because you have kind of more control over this kind of development from happening. Next slide, please. Just another rendering of that project. Next slide, please. Keep going. So the warrant article, as many of you have probably heard a dozen times by now, it's triggered with 6 or more projects, and it ranges from 10% affordability to 15% affordability. And that's based on the size of the project. And that was done through some pro forma analysis looking at what a project could and couldn't pencil. So that's where the ranges came from. Next slide, please. Just touching base, so the IZB includes some pro rata fees, reduced minimum lot size, setback, buffer, waiver, to kind of promote better site design. So for example, if a lot has a big area of wetlands, the IZB, the Zoning Board of Appeals, could approve houses being sited in a different place to avoid developing in that wetland area or pudding stone area. There's also a reduction in the parking requirements. And there's a reduction in parking requirements available if you're near public transit. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So this is a really important thing for people, I think, to understand, is how the minimum lot size waiver works. So what you see here is an analysis that we did looking at the existing conditions. So let's use Res A, for example. The average lot size is about 30,203 square feet. The median lot size, which can be more helpful because it's the middle number. So half are bigger and half are smaller. So it's about 28,200 square feet. Next slide, please. So then we started looking at what was on the ground, did this analysis to say, okay, what's appropriate for the character of Walpole's neighborhood? And that's where you get the 75% lot reduction for the affordable unit. The way that works is 5 units have the full required 30,000 square feet, and the 6th unit would have 7,500 square feet, and then it's averaged over 6. So what you end up with are lots that are just over 26,000 square feet. And if you remember, the median lot size was about 28,000 square feet. So I certainly can't look at a lot and tell if it's 2,000 square feet more or less. Next slide, please. So another thing that came up when we were talking about this is people were asking if they could take their acre size lot and divide it into a bunch of 7,500 square foot parcels. That's not how this works. You only get the discount for the affordable units that are required. And you would also need 3.6 acres for this bylaw to even be triggered. So I just want that context out there. Next slide, please. I'm happy to talk about this math later if people have questions. Next slide, please. Next slide. Oh yeah, so 3.6 acres is about almost 3 football fields. So if that's easier to picture than acres. Next slide, please. So I'm happy to talk about this if folks have questions. Otherwise, I'll just skip through it. This is just about how the SHI, that 10% number that people talk about, is calculated. So that's where we're at today. Next slide, please. This is a question that I get a lot, is what does 80% AMI actually mean? And so I've got the 2019 HUD income limits on the left-hand column there. Again, I'm happy to talk about this further if people have questions, but for a family of 4, it's $89,200 is 80% AMI. So that's what this bylaw, those are the units that this bylaw is proposed to encourage the development of. Next slide, please. Happy to talk about this as well. These are just kind of some surrounding communities that have different forms of inclusionary zoning, whether it be an actual bylaw or an overlay. Inclusionary zoning is not new to Walpole, actually. The town meeting approved inclusionary zoning for AQVs, I think a couple years ago. I'm not sure exactly what year.
And explain what AQVs are.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. So AQV is the age qualified village bylaw. So there's an affordability component required to that as well under existing regulations. Next slide, please. So a lot of folks also ask, how can this help Walpole residents? I am one Walpole resident, so I certainly don't want to try to speak for everybody, but these are some things that could potentially be helpful to residents. And I think the one people seem to be most interested in is the 70% local preference. So units that are developed under the IZB, up to 70% of them local preference, so Walpole residents can have the kind of first shot at. So, and there's some other things listed here, which I'm happy to talk about, but I really want to get to people's questions. So try not to talk too much now. And that's really all the slides I have, Andrew, so.
Great. Should I stop sharing the screen? And again, I can pull this presentation. I'm going to stop sharing the screen now. I can pull that. I can refer back to that presentation at any point.
Okay.
And I'll try to also pull up the bylaw if there's a specific question. Okay, so we're done with Ashley's presentation. Let's get into questions. And again, if you were joining us later in this meeting, I just wanted to prioritize, again, I don't want to exclude anyone, but I did want to prioritize RTMs because we're having the public hearings for the Finance Committee and the Planning Board next week where you can make your case for or against. And of course, town meeting members will show up on the 17th at the high school for town meeting. But for town meeting members specifically, please do what Ron Ardeen just did, which is that he asked a question in the chat and he asked, will these slides be available to town meeting members prior to town meeting? Yes, I can email that out to all town meeting members tomorrow. I'll email out a recording of this. We are recording this, by the way. Maybe I should have said that at the beginning. I apologize, but we're recording this whole Zoom interaction. And so, Ron, to answer your question, yes, I'll email out these slides with the recording tomorrow. And so now for RTMs, and I see a lot of the names here I do recognize as RTMs, which is great. For RTMs, please either raise your hand and I'll try to get to it, but we have almost 40 people on this Zoom, so bear with me. Either raise your hand physically or with the little hand icon, or just ask a question in the chat. And I'll try to create a queue of people so we can have an orderly process, and Ashley will be the point person to answer your technical questions, but we have members of the Housing Partnership here to weigh in as well. So any questions?
They're all set, right?
Yep.
I'm looking around, we got a lot of great questions through email. I just want to give a few shout outs here to Bob Damish, asked some great questions through email. Thank you, Bob, for those. Who else? Erica Ann Burden asked some fantastic questions through email.
Andrew, I'll start. How does this impact taxes in town?
All right. Do you want to go with that, Ashley?
I don't know if I'm the best person. Like, I don't, that's not my area at all. I can say that this is not increasing taxes. And at one point, the Community Preservation Act was referenced in the Housing Trust, but we got a ton of feedback that people were just really uncomfortable with that. So that has all been removed based on that feedback. So that's all I can really say as far as the tax portion goes.
Andrew, Joanne has a question, and
Yes.
then I'll read a question from Brad Hickey after that.
Okay, great. So Joanne, go ahead and unmute yourself. If you can, I can help you, but we'd love to hear your question.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. This is really for you, Ashley, because I know you've already done this for me at least once. But do you mind just kind of talking through, like, the example of the 6 houses, the lot size? Could you just go through it? Just, I think it would help everyone to just hear it.
Sure. Andrew, could you pull up that slide? Oh, also, where's the chat? I just added the presentation to the town website, and I'm going to link it. Oops, chat disappeared. I'm going to put it in the chat box, so you should be able to pull it up there.
Is this the example that, what slide did you want?
Joanne, is your question about how the lot size waiver works?
Yes.
Okay. So the way the lot size waiver works is, yes, thank you, that's a good spot. So what we did is we looked at the existing conditions. And the reason we did that was I was told that one of the goals was to find a way to create an inclusionary zoning bylaw that respected the existing density and kind of character of the neighborhood. So how do we do that? And how do we balance like this need to kind of offset the impact of requiring an affordable unit by giving waivers? And by waivers, I mean things like, setback, frontage, usable open space, buffers. So there are these waivers, but the goal was to make it a balanced approach. So we looked at, okay, what are the existing lot sizes in these zoning districts? And we got, if you're looking at the average or the median, they're pretty close to each other. And so we said, okay, now what does it look like if we give a lot reduction for the affordable units? So, okay, we're requiring a developer provide what people refer to as a public benefit. How do we offset that? Well, you can do a lot of things. So the 75% lot reduction is one of many of those things. So if you go to the next slide, so here's that math.
Mm-hmm.
Or I think, is there one more that shows the calculation? Okay, so
Yeah.
is this okay if I use a 16 unit project?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
So what you have here is that lot size equation. For a 16 unit project, do you see the 14 being multiplied by 30,000 at the bottom?
Yeah. Yes.
So those are the 14 market rate units. You would then add 2 affordable units at a lot size of 7,500. And some people see 7,500 and they think we should not, no lots in these areas are 7,500 square feet. That's not matching what's existing. But under the law, you're not allowed to treat market rate and affordable housing differently. So what happens is you do that top, I feel like my 6th grade math teacher would be really proud. So you do that top part of the equation, but you divide by the total number of units in the entire project. So you add the 14 units and then the 2 affordable, you take all that lot size and you divide by 16. So then you end up with a lot size of 26,250 square feet for every single of the
Everyone.
units. So there's no lot that is 7,500 square feet. Every single lot is 26,250 square feet. And that was really close to the existing conditions. So I think that we felt that kind of honored that the goal of what the IZB was trying to do. Does that answer it?
Yes, and that's really clear. So then when we go on to the pricing, so no one's going to have that small lot. Everyone's going to have just basically the same size lot. It's going to all look the same, but we're going to have two that will be at an affordable pricing level.
At 80% affordable.
And that's what it'll be. Okay.
Of the eight.
I'm good. And I think this makes a ton of sense.
And just to be clear, all of the houses, they all have to have the same fixtures, but they won't have the same finishes. So like they all need to have, if the market rate units have washer and dryer, the affordable units have to have washer and dryer. But what happens in practice is the market rate units will have like really, expensive countertops, whereas the affordable unit will have like a more economic material, if that makes sense.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for that great question, Joanne. Next in the queue, I'm just gonna do my best, folks, to go according to the RTMs that either raise their hand or ask a question. So next will be Brad Hickey, then Julie, then Bill O'Connell, and then Ron Ardeen. So Julie, thank you.
Sorry, you say Brad was next?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm losing my mind here. I apologize. Brad asked a question in the text, in the chat. He asked, can you clarify for everyone what impact this might have on the downtown developments had it been in place previously? So I'm going to take a shot at that, and then maybe, Ashley, you can weigh in.
Sure.
So first of all, to answer Brad's question, in my opinion, we are looking for what is called safe harbor. Now, safe harbor under Chapter 40B, the Master General Law, Chapter 40B, can come in one of two forms. One, there's kind of permanent or semi-permanent safe harbor when you're above 10%, and you can have greater control, local control over your zoning. You're not as exposed or not exposed at all to 40B developments. Now, a second type of safe harbor, to answer Brad's question, is if you are making incremental progress towards raising your SHI, that number of affordable units, you get temporary safe harbor. So if you get a 0.5 percentage point increase in 1 year in your affordable housing stock, then you get a year safe harbor, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ashley. And if you get a 1 percentage point increase in your SHI, you get a 2-year safe harbor. Is that right?
I like to think about it in actual unit numbers because it's easier for me to.
Yeah, so it would be like 45.
It's 45 and 90 respectively. Yep.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, so in other words, if we were to build in a given year 45 affordable units, even though we wouldn't be at 10%, because right now we're at 7.1%, we would get a year of safe harbor, a year to reject 40B applications. So to answer Brad's question, the apartments downtown total a little over 300 units. Now, that's 2 developments, and if you had the 15% if you had the 15% affordable requirement that comes in this inclusionary zoning bylaw, you would have 45 units, right? And so I think there's a decent argument to be made that, while not guaranteed, if we had inclusionary zoning in the past, we could potentially be in temporary safe harbor and we would not be as exposed to Summer Street. Again, I don't want to oversell inclusionary zoning as the silver bullet that will solve all of our problems regarding 40B in Walpole and solve all of our affordable housing needs. That would be overselling this. I think it's a modest step in the right direction. So I hope that answers Brad's question. Ashley, is there anything you want to add? Or Brad, if you want to chime in, please.
Nope, I think you covered it.
All right, now I apologize. Now, Julie.
Andrew, this is Brad. Sorry. I just wanted to clarify one thing, if that's okay.
Please.
Hello? Oh, okay.
Hey, Brad.
And I appreciate all that info. And yep.
Hey, Sheil,
Amen. Is it not working?
No, we
Hey,
can
will they
hear
be able to
you.
hear? Will they be
And
able
now
to
we
hear me?
can. We hear you, Brad.
Sorry about that. So I appreciate that answer. And I guess the larger point I was trying to get clarity on, which I believe is accurate, is had this been in place, some percentage of those units would have had to have been affordable, and it would be getting us closer to the goal of 10%, regardless of the exact numbers and whether it qualifies us for safe harbor or not. If we could have demanded or acquired under the IZB that those
They call me,
developers
I'll unmute.
included affordable units, we would be closer than we are right now.
That's right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
Yep, that's definitely correct. We would be closer to that 10%. Sorry, my internet's a little slow.
Yeah. Great point, Brad. I think we're all set with Brad's great question. Next up is Julie.
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
do.
Okay. All right. So in the context of what you guys were just discussing, is the IZB, is this type of zoning, is it, I guess I'm trying to figure out, is it permanent, or if the town were to get to that 10% magic number, so to speak, is there a way, not out of it, but is there a way to then waive it or just let that number sit at 10%? Is there a mechanism in place where it doesn't always have to apply? And then I have a follow-up question. I don't know if you want both now or if you want to start with that one.
I
I'm
prefer
sorry, I
both
lost
times,
electricity.
so I
so
don't lose
that's why I'm in the shadows here with it.
Ashley, can I just say
Can you
that's a
guys-
similar question to what Ron asked in the chat about if we meet our 10%, is this really necessary?
So I think that it's important. So an IZB is going to take a long time to really get projects going and really get units on the SHI. That's just development. And the planning timeline of this is thinking in 10-year increments, right? So in 2020, there's another census coming out, which will change that denominator for getting to the 10%. In 2030, another census is going to come out, which will again change the denominator. So I think that my opinion is that the numbers in the IZB and the affordability percentages are so low that really getting over 10% and staying over 10% would be really impressive. It's just hard to get to because you're not including units that are built 5 and under. So there's a ton of development happening that isn't going to be adding SHI units. And the other thing that I'm glad you asked this question, Julie, because this is a living document. This isn't something that you should just, say town meeting adopts it. It's not something that town meeting should say, okay, we're all set. We could put that on the shelf now and not think about it again. It's a living document, and it should constantly be assessed and thought about intentionally as markets change, as needs change. So it can always go to town meeting for a vote. So I guess that is to say, if it's no longer appropriate for the town and there are other goals and there are other ways of going about the housing needs, then that should go to town meeting again. And it's a lot of work, but that's the job, I guess.
So thank you for that. That leads me to my next question. And that would be, wouldn't it make sense then to put a built-in provision into this so that instead of going to town meeting each time, the zoning board would have the power to change it if necessary, but under a set of circumstances that would warrant it?
We're not allowed to do that under state law.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
So that's against state law.
Okay, all right. And then
I did the math once. I should have done it today. I did it I was telling someone, I was like, this feels like Groundhog Day, like going back to the other town meeting. I did the math on the number of units that need to be built to get to the 2020 10%, and it's a lot. So I just think it's gonna, the idea of really getting over and staying over 10% and being able to get rid of the bylaw, it's just not, from the math that I was doing, it's just not, I don't want to not, I don't know a good word for it. I think you know what I'm getting at. And then what happens in towns that can be really devastating is towns have adopted, they did all of these things to work towards getting units. And then the new census comes out and they dip below and get to like 9%. And then a frenzy of 40Bs comes in. I'm forgetting the name of the towns, but I can send you some examples if you're interested.
Okay. So I would be misled if I thought for a second that this would ultimately truly resolve the issue of 40B.
Again, it's one tool. It's
Okay.
not the silver bullet. No.
Okay. All right. I think that's all I have. Oh, may I ask one more question? Andrew, I think you, and forgive me because I wasn't involved as an RTM, and I'm not saying I didn't necessarily pay attention way back when, but is there a way to explain what went wrong with the first round of this and why it wasn't in place prior to the two, the apartments that were built in downtown? Was there a certain provision that needed to be changed, or does anyone know the history? And I'm sorry, I don't recall what it was as to why it was voted down or not voted for. Does anybody know? And if not, if it goes too far back, that's fine. I was just curious because I was just looking to compare it maybe.
Are you asking about the IZB, this draft, a version of it, a different version was on the fall town meeting warrant last fall, 2019, and it got referred back for further study. I could explain why. That's different from, the two big apartment buildings that I think around 2017, 2018 got their building permits.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So I'll just, so my timing was off with the downtown apartments. So then my question is 2019 referred back, and why was that? I'm just not familiar with why, but.
Sure. Yeah. So we had a community listening session in September of 2019, just after Labor Day. We had a public survey with over 50 responses in September and October of 2019. We had met with the planning board, the zoning board, board of appeals. We did some outreach to. Who's the we here? This is the select board that sponsored this article both now and in the past, and the housing partnership that did a lot of the legwork for this. So in the fall of 2019, leading up to a public hearing before the planning board, we had heard from developers. We had heard from builders in this town who weren't happy with some of the provisions. We'd also heard from residents who wanted some changes, some edits to the final text. Now, you can't change the text too close to a planning board public hearing. And so it turns out the planning board public hearing could be challenged in court in terms of, there was one text that the planning board was going to have a public hearing on when in fact we were going to vote on another text. So rather than engender all this confusion, Julie, we said, you know what, let's take our time here. Let's hit the pause button. Even though this is an important issue, let's take in that feedback from developers, take in that feedback from the community, from the survey, from the listening sessions. Let's take our time and we're going to shoot for the spring 2020 town meeting. And so that's why I got referred back to committee. The housing partnership, or me as the chair, we had consulted and we asked for more time. So it wasn't against our wishes. We wanted to change it. And we made some, I think, really critical, small, but critical tweaks to the bylaw that have made it even stronger. And I really wish it was in place as of this spring. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we had to postpone a lot of articles. So does that answer your question, Julie, about why it was referred back and it's been delayed now for a year?
Yes, and I promise this will be my last question. Do you, the things that you guys tweaked that was critical, I guess I'm curious to know what they were or what they are.
Sure. We changed. Originally, we just had a hard density bonus, which is what we called it, of extra units that a developer could build on a given parcel if they were going to, be caught under the IZB in terms of having to build affordable. We changed that to what you see now, which is a much smarter, much more targeted, not a density bonus, but dimensional waivers, which include not just the lot size requirements, the lot size reduction that Ashley went over, includes parking, it includes setback, frontage, all these different site design elements that could be changed by the Zoning Board of Appeals if there is a demonstrated public benefit. In other words, the true answer, the full answer to your question, Julie, is we hired a great housing consultant in September, October of last year, Courtney Starling, and we hired Ashley Clark, who's here tonight, around that time. We actually didn't have her own staff here in town last summer, or the summer of 2019, when we were drafting the first version of that bylaw. So the changes, the big changes was a shift from a density bonus to these dimensional waivers. There were also changes to how the payment in lieu fee was calculation is done. There was changes on Article 20. I know we've been talking so much about Article 19, the inclusionary zoning bylaw, but there were tweaks to Article 20 in terms of the structure of the Affordable Housing Trust. So there were a number of changes that I don't have prepared with me to present to you tonight because it's been a year, but I could send you an email, Julie, about those changes and our rationale for them.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate it.
Great
All set.
question. Thank you, Julie. Next in line, Bill O'Connell.
Thank you, Andrew. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Bill O'Connell, Precinct 4. I appreciate everyone's work. I know you've been at it for a while, and I'm kind of a fairly new RTM. So I just have some general questions concerning the cost and revenue, potential cost of the town in administering Article 20 in that trust, as well as the potential lost revenue for buildable lots that may be removed as a result of this bylaw. So I guess, having seen the in lieu of provision and developers that potentially mitigate, I would imagine there's going to be some administrative costs. And I guess the question is, and I know you're a volunteer board, it's going to be a volunteer trust board, which is terrific, but is the town going to have to hire someone to administer this?
Ashley, you can jump in here, but this will likely be under your purview if it passes, I believe, right? The Affordable Housing Trust, in terms of your interaction. I'm not sure about that, but the way I would answer it is typically, whether it's, we've spoken with development directors in different towns. I think we had one from Brookline visit one of our meetings who talked about how the housing trust typically works. Part of their budget as they collect in lieu fees is to hire an accountant, because there's an annual audit that's required, and there's approval by the select board. Just to answer Bill's question in terms of oversight, the select board is going to be still involved here. Again, also a volunteer board. There was no intention that we would need to hire someone to administer Article 20, the Affordable Housing Trust. My understanding is other towns already have planners, people like Ashley, people that will be empowered in their position as planners, as community development directors, to work with this volunteer board. I've never heard of extra personnel being required just because a town adopts a housing trust.
So Andrew, the only reason I bring it up is because I've just seen it where, developers potentially mitigate, and they're paying, in my experience in some other towns, when they do an in lieu of, they're potentially not paying that lump sum all at once. There's mortgage discharges that have to be recorded. There's a lot of administrative work. So I would imagine that someone, and I would think it's not going to be the volunteer board, is going to be responsible for coordinating that. I understand that you're going to be potentially raising fees through developers' mitigation fees, but I'm just wondering if that's been addressed, and because there's a lot of administrative work for developers that potentially opt out of this. There's recording deed, there's recording mortgages and things that need to be discharged. So, and again, I've seen it in other towns. And then also,
Question first. Are you getting into a new topic?
no, I'm sorry. No. So that's my question is from a cost perspective.
Okay.
And then, I see section F, which has the trust having the authority to hire accountants and, spend
So-
$5,000. So
The answer
it
is
just,
that they
Pardon me?
the short answer is that trusts are very frequently not staffed and consultants are hired. So the answer is that they self-fund.
okay. And have you done projections on potentially, how many developers are going to opt out to self-fund?
So the reality is, in practice, the way that the in lieu fee, if you read the text, it says strongly discouraged, because the whole goal is to get units onto the SHI. As I've been told, here's our goal: is to get units onto the SHI to work towards that 10%, so that we can try and have local control over affordable housing development. So the way that works is like it's strongly discouraged, and it's something that I just don't anticipate it as being an option that the developer takes. In reality, they'll probably either choose to build the unit or construct 5 units. And if there are in lieu fees coming in, they can self-fund. So I don't see it costing the town money.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, Andrew, if I could ask a few
Oh,
more
please.
questions, I really appreciate
Please.
the time. So with respect to revenue and potential lost revenue that, for developers that are required to allocate number of lots that otherwise would have been built, has the town or the board looked at the potential lost revenue?
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
So for example, if a developer, is going to build 8 lots and they have to allocate 2 of them and sell them at an affordable rate, if they had sold that at, for example, an $800,000 house, which I'm ballparking the taxes are probably $14,000 or $15,000 a year. So has the board looked at the potential lost revenue to the town?
Sure. So one point of clarification: a project with 8 units would require 1 affordable.
No, I'm sorry, I was just using that as an example. So
No, there
either
are
one.
a lot of moving targets. I just want to be very clear about these details. So that 1 unit would be assessed at a lower value because the resale value is restricted in the future. So that affordable home ownership unit can never be sold at market rate.
I understand, but it'll be taxed obviously at a lower assessed value.
That's what I said. So
Yep. Okay. Thank you. And then, and again, with respect to, the costs, the benefits and potential lost revenue to the town, if the town is at 7.1% now, Summer Street
Sorry.
coming
can I just
online. Yep.
that I don't think that was exactly accurate. So you're able to get an entire unit on land that you weren't able to before. So 7,500 square feet is accommodating a single family home that wouldn't have been able to exist in the first place. So
I understand, but it whatever the market rate, potentially would be for that, could be a full-size house on a smaller unit. No?
The zoning wouldn't allow that without the setback requirements. And also this would help save our commercial and industrial zone land for that purpose, as opposed to for residential development because of 40Bs. So we would, if we have commercial tax base, which is greater in those that are designated commercial, we'd actually increase our revenue to the town.
Okay, thank you. And Andrew, if I may, so with respect to the safe harbor, if it's currently at 7.1% with Summer Street, and I'm out of the loop with Summer Street, I don't know when it's coming online, but aren't we going to get to 10% very soon with potentially Summer Street? and the other 40Bs that are in the pipeline?
So I wish there was a short, easy answer to that question. The answer is it is a dance of a lot of moving pieces. So for example, the Zoning Board of Appeals approved Burns Avenue with 36 units. Burns Avenue, we were able to add 25% of 36.
9.
9 units, thank you, Andrew. So we added 9 units towards our 10%. Those units will fall off if a building permit is not pulled in 1 year. So that project is currently under appeals with the HAC. So I don't think they're going to get a building permit in a year, so those units will probably fall off. They'll get added again once certificate of occupancies are issued. I take those and certify it with the state. Summer Street project is 300 units. I've never seen a project go out with the exact same number of units it came in with. The other kind of variable here is that when the 2020 census comes out, our denominator will change. What is more likely to happen, what I think towns who want to take a proactive approach at this is they say, okay, we got 90 units approved. We have a 2-year safe harbor. And that's the time when you really want to be proactive about working with developers and working with the development community about getting projects built on the town's terms outside of the 40B process. So that's when you can take 40B friendly applications and work on getting a project that makes sense for the community.
So do we have the potential to be in a safe harbor in the next year, or is there a 2-year phase in or something? Or
yeah, so if the ZBA votes to grant Summer Street a comprehensive permit and it approves at least 90 units, the town will be in a 2-year safe harbor.
Okay. And what's the timeline for potentially the ZBA taking action?
Under the state of COVID and the way the world is, I've stopped trying to guess how things are going to go on that. It's too tough.
If I can just moderate here, Joanne would like to just speak to this. So she messaged me, and I want to, encourage a healthy dialogue. So Joanne, please.
Sure.
Hi, Bill. I just wanted, please, Andrew, Audrey, Ashley, chime in here, but isn't it it's my understanding, I understand the census and everything else, but the number right now that's our denominator, I think this is, to me, the biggest issue and the frustration with the downtown 2 buildings and age qualified at Walpole Woodworkers. So isn't that like 600-ish units? And that is not included in the denominator right now when we're getting the number of 7.1%. So Bill, we're already behind. Even if we got the 300 unit complex down on Summer Street, we're not going to be at 10.
Ashley, is that the case?
So MAPC does population projections, and I'm trying to find the slide so I can send it. But Walpole's been experiencing, I don't have to tell this group, a lot of residential development. And so I think we would surely qualify for the there's status quo projections. I'm trying to find it here, so I'm talking and clicking at the same time. But no, I'm trying to find the number so I can give it to you. Let me find the slide and I'll get back to you on that if that's okay.
And just while we're on this topic, I remember the math you did last year, Ashley, or early this year, where you made a reasonable projection from these MAPC forecast of what the 2020 census denominator would be for housing units, and factoring in Summer Street, we were still below 10%. However, Bill, to your point, I think Julie kind of alluded to this earlier too. It's not a bad thing to be a little above 10% because, again, there's a demonstrated need for affordable housing, seniors, veterans, people who grew up in this town who can't afford to live in this town. I think there are really 2 great reasons to support this. It's really an alignment of interest. One, no one I've met in Walpole likes 40Bs. No one I've met in Massachusetts likes 40Bs. I think we all want to be above 10% to take back local control. We also, I would hope, a lot of us, at least, for a second reason, would want to provide local housing, affordable housing for police officers and teachers, people who work in our community. So my point, Bill, regarding being above 10% is that one of the nice features about inclusionary zoning, about having this IZB is actually for towns that are above 10%, it helps them stay there, right? So I don't think that you can really, by the naked eye, tell the difference between a community with 11% affordable housing or 10.1, right? And I think it's not a harm to Walpole to have a little above 10% affordable housing. We need it. There's a demonstrated need. 30% of Walpole homeowners spend more than 30% of their income on housing, and 60% of Walpole renters spend more than 30% of their income on housing. And that was before the pandemic and the potential tsunami of evictions and foreclosures coming. So Bill, to your point, I think being a little above 10%, even with Summer Street, it still makes sense to have an IZB, because as we grow in the future over the next decade or 2 decades, this will prevent us from falling behind below 10%.
Thank you. And then if I may ask one more, just
Sure.
with respect to the ZBA waivers, does the ZBA have the discretion, or are they going to be required, like a 40B, to basically forego any dimensional requirements? And I just looked through the bylaw quickly, but my question is, does the ZBA have the discretion, or will they be required, like an overlay district, to sorry.
As you know, as a zoning attorney, a 40, this is under 40A, and so yes, the ZBA has a huge amount of discretion in whether or not granting these waivers. And unlike 40B, where the appeals period under a 40B goes to the HAC, and all of their decisions are online, you can look them up for yourself. 99% of the time, they side with the applicant. Under an IZB, under a local bylaw, those appeals go through the normal 40A process, and there's a lot of deference given to the town. So the ZBA is in a much better position under a local zoning bylaw to say, no, this is not appropriate. So yes, they do have a lot of discretion in this IZB.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone's time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the great questions, Bill. Really appreciate it. All right, next in the queue, I believe, is Ron Ardeen. Go ahead, Ron. Hey, I'll ask you to unmute yourself, Ron.
I can read his question. He typed it in the chat.
Okay, yeah, please.
If I can find it up there too. So he asked, similar to what people are asking. He said, it's about the Summer Street project, again, and exceeding 10%, and if the article will be necessary. So I don't know, if Ron, if we answered your question.
Can you hear me now?
It's a little, there's some feedback there, Ron. Maybe you can.
Ron, I think you have two screens open.
Yep.
All right, we've got some close encounters of the third kind going on with Ron. I'm just joking, Ron. Maybe you can respond back in the text here, and you can just type your question out. And I've gotten into that feedback loop myself before, so hopefully we can resolve that. All right, that is really disturbing. No, I'm just kidding. Ron, I'm gonna keep you muted there. It seems like we're having some feedback issues, so please, Ron, don't mean to steamroll you. If you have a question, please type it in the chat.
Andrew, if he has both his phone on and his computer on, that's what's going to cause that.
Yeah, there's two different screens open.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I see. So Okay, Ron says Audrey did answer my question. And again, Ron, I've got your email, Ron. We can always follow up through email to get to the bottom of that. All right. Okay, so next in the queue is Chandler Sullivan, I believe. Chandler texted. Okay, go ahead, Chandler.
Yeah, I just was wondering, or let me go back to my question. I think you guys might have opened it. I think it was more about for any particular large project, but this is more specific to 40B. And as Joanne had alluded to, and you guys, it doesn't really help us because of the census information coming out with the denominator going up, that we're still not going to be close to trying to prevent or cap this from occurring.
Well, so I'm optimistic that we will be in a safe harbor with there are 4 plus 1 40Bs currently in the pipeline. So I'm optimistic that the board will get that 90 unit number approved, which will put us in a 2-year safe harbor. And so I think that's an important time to take advantage of that time, where we can say no to 40B projects. Or we can say, yeah, we'll take a friendly 40B project, but it's on much different terms because the board has the right to say no if you're in that safe harbor. Whereas now it's very difficult to deny a 40B project. So it just kind of changes the power dynamic a little bit. Right now it's very much in favor of the developer. And if you're in a safe harbor, whether it be through a friendly 40B project or an inclusionary zoning bylaw, you're just in a much better negotiating position.
And what are the other 40Bs that you said? Obviously, I know the Summer Street and you said the Burn Ave, but what are the other ones coming down the pike?
So there's the Summer Street project, which is proposed at 300 units. There is the Dupie Street project, which is 12 units.
So what one? Sorry, can you repeat that?
Dupie Street. If
Dupie,
I'm not
okay.
saying that correctly, no one's told me yet, and I've been working on it for a while. So, then there is Summer Street, Dupie Street. There's Moose Hill Road, which is 8 units, and there is Burns Avenue 2.0. So the applicant has submitted a revision to their plans to add, I think it's 40 or 42 units for some reason. I can't think of the exact number right now. So that one's complicated because it's both under appeal and they're also applying to have the board review their changes. And then the town recently responded to a project on Pinnacle Point.
Pinnacle, okay. So this new IZB would potentially, it deters developers or makes them a little more difficult? Is my understanding correct? Or not more difficult, just gives us more say in how we want to go about?
I think the answer to that is, I think it's pretty balanced. It's creating an opportunity to develop on land that might not have been able to be developable on before, whether there are difficult site things going on like swamps or pudding stone. And so there's potentially the opportunity to build on the area of land that is upland and not touch the other stuff, which is expensive to build on and you have to go through a ton of town processes for. But sometimes zoning bylaw pushes this kind of development by requiring a certain percentage of usable open space, by requiring frontage and different kinds of setbacks. So I think it encourages developers to build under the local bylaws instead of under 40B, and it just provides more flexibility, but I think within the characteristic of the existing neighborhoods. Does that answer the question? Sorry, it was very long.
Nope. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Chandler. Next in the queue is Pat Hinton. Pat, I know you typed something earlier. Maybe you want to ask it verbally.
Well, thank you, Andrew. Thank you for all doing this and taking the time to do this. So just in general, if this was to pass, can you just, primarily for Ashley, elaborate on kind of the process for builders when they want to come forward and present? Is it the board that gives can you just walk me through the process, like how it changes versus where it is today?
I can definitely walk you through the process of what it would be. I think there are too many variables based on the specifics of each project to compare. But basically, this creates a special permit process that you would go to the Zoning Board of Appeals for. So it would go through the same process as any other special permit application, and would have those same processes.
Okay.
Does that answer it? I can't I can't compare because I don't
So
like
I just,
project.
yeah, so there's not a special committee that's another committee outside of our process now that we have.
Well, no, I'm glad you say that. So the way it currently works is when an application comes in for a special permit or a variance or any application under 40A, all relevant departments are notified and asked to provide comments. Mm-hmm. So a really important part of this, if town meeting decides to approve it, would be to have the Housing Trust provide recommendation to the zoning board. So just to have a conversation, because the idea is to address the housing production plan goals, which is getting to that 10%. So it would be a public process. All the abutters would be notified, which for any special permit, that's the case. Sorry, for people who don't know, 40A is the state law that regulates zoning. I realize I'm talking in jargon and I apologize for that.
Ashley, could you just, you mentioned something about the Housing Trust. Could you talk about what their process would be? How would it be, criteria they would use in determining what was approved, what wasn't approved?
Yeah, so with the Housing Trust, as Andrew mentioned earlier, I kind of came into the town after a lot of work had already been done on these bylaws. But for me as the staff person that, housing falls within community development. It's a very natural place for it to end up. But it was really important for me, and I also heard this from residents, that the folks on the Housing Trust have technical skills and knowledge of development pro forma, knowledge of accounting practices. And so that was one of the big changes that we made that was really important, I think, to make sure that whoever is on the Housing Trust has some experience in this, and so can provide a helpful recommendation to the ZBA. I'm sure that if town meeting approves the Housing Trust, the partnership, I believe, would dissolve, and they would have to reappoint all new members, and that board would come up with their policy on how they wanted to address applications.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Pat. If that answers your question, I'm going to go on to the next person in the queue. That is Erica. And then after Erica, we have Ted Lynch, who's an RTM, who will ask a question. He wrote it in the chat. And then Bill O'Connell and Ron Ardeen after Ted. So Erica.
Hi, Andrew.
Hi.
Hi. So I am just trying to understand the purpose of the in lieu fee. So if the purpose of the first article is to, require developers to do affordable housing and get to the 10%, why are we offering them the choice of not doing that and making the payment? I don't really understand. Is that a requirement? I know Ashley said that it's strongly discouraged, but then if it's strongly discouraged, why even give them the option?
So there are opportunities where it might be appropriate for a one-time cash infusion, especially if there's a project kind of on the horizon and the town wants to leverage those funds to maybe, instead of getting one unit, we can get a lot more units. Or, for example, if the housing authority needs to replace their roof, the funds can be used for that. So there are situations where it might be appropriate. It's strongly discouraged. That's why it's a high fee. It would cost less to actually build the unit, but we really want the unit. Sometimes it's appropriate for a cash infusion. So just as kind of a pressure valve release, that was included in the draft. And also just to note, any spending of funds over, I believe it's $5,000 would be approved by the select board.
Okay, thank you. So for an example, for the Summer Street project, if the developer said he didn't, are you saying so it would have been in his best interest to build the affordable units instead of making that payment because the payment would be higher?
Yeah, and for a project of that size, we'd want those units on the SHI. So that would not be, I don't think, and it's situation by situation, but you know, so I'm
Okay.
sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No, that makes sense. I just want to make sure that it wouldn't have been a situation where the Summer Street developer could have said, you know, we're not going to build the affordable units, we're going to pay into this trust, and that just defeats the whole purpose.
Right, and that's why the language is worded so strongly, and it's at the discretion of the ZBA. So it's not that an applicant can come in and say, hey, this is how I'm doing it, get on board, and it's a conversation with the town, and ultimately it's up to the ZBA to decide.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much.
And that's also where this, you know, having a board kind of focused on what's going on housing wide should say to the ZBA, no, we don't want the in lieu fee on this, or hey, by the way, we have this project that we'd like to get off the ground. For example, towns have leveraged this fund to I try to talk about something simple and it always ends up longer than I mean. But so the housing production plan has identified senior housing as a really important need in Walpole. And the senior housing that's been identified is for folks on fixed income, right? And the 80% level does not address their needs. So if you're a senior and you're getting a Social Security check, you're not going to be able to afford an affordable senior housing unit. So what these funds can also do is it gives the town a seat at the table with a developer to say, hey, we have this cash. We want to put it towards your development so that you can provide our seniors affordable housing up to 30 to 50%. So basically, we can help subsidize the project. As an example of a way that an IZB gives you kind of nimbleness to make housing more affordable for the folks that need it on local terms.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. That explains a lot. Thanks.
Sure.
Thank you, Erica, for your great questions. Next in the queue is Ted Lynch, who wrote a question. But Ted, if you want to ask it verbally, you can, or I'll read it.
What is the opposition to 40B? Why are we doing everything to avoid it if the goal is affordable housing?
Well, I was told the goal of the IZB was to develop affordable housing within local regulations and not at the state level.
Ted, if I may take a
Go ahead.
if I may take a shot at this, I think no town likes to be exposed to 40Bs. In other words, you lose control of your local zoning bylaws not applying in the development's proposal. You just are powerless. And so the goal of there's the carrot and stick, but it's more of a stick. The 40B law passed. It's now over 50 years old, 1969. So it has a stick that kind of forces towns, hey, shape up, get more affordable housing in your town. Otherwise, you have to pay this price. Now, putting aside all the debates about whether the state law should be changed, I have thoughts about that. But putting aside those thoughts, Ted, I think the town's position is it's irresponsible from a planning perspective to have 5 active 40B developments, Burns Ave kind of disrupting, at least the abutters and the neighbors believe it's disrupting their neighborhood. Summer Street in South Walpole, abutters in the South Walpole community rightfully, in my view, concerned about traffic, environmental impacts, yada, yada. Being against 40B, though, Ted, I don't think means that you're against affordable housing. Like, again, I think that was my point earlier when Bill was asking about, being just above 10%. I think it would be great if Walpole had 11%, maybe even 12% affordable housing in this town. It wouldn't be a bad thing. It would mean, to Ashley's point, more seniors who are not making $90,000 a year in household income, who would, qualify for affordable housing, who could actually, have affordable places to live. So I think that we both want local control. So we want to be above 10%. And I think that, I can't speak for the town, but I think the select board doesn't like 40Bs. And we also want to encourage affordable housing because it's a demonstrated need.
And I would just, putting the economic development hat, a 40B project can go in any zoning district. So the Summer Street project, for example, is going on a very large piece of land that's zoned industrial and is, taking up one of the few parcels that's left that's zoned that way. So under the local regulations, you still get to maintain your industrial and commercial land uses.
Actually, with all due respect, we're not getting any industry here. We're not, right? And I think I'll pull a Band-Aid off of this thing. When I hear 40B, I hear people talk about it'll change the town's character and stigmatize the residents. And I frankly say BS to all that. If we want to make affordable housing, let's use the option. People can be resistant to change in this town. But I think we're, making out of a banquet out of a ham sandwich to try and create affordable housing.
Well,
Leave it at that. This is my commentary.
I respect your position. I just would say that it's not about being anti-40B, but to change our position so that it's not an unfriendly process. As the staff person that works on these projects that the town receives, it's not the easiest process to deal with. So I respect your position, but I think it's about creating
We've got a long embedded planning and zoning board and panel and process, and I think that this town is resistant to change, and that's part of it. So I'll drop at that point.
Can I add a couple things, Ted? I agree with you that, if we're going to do affordable housing, then that's our moral imperative, then we should do it too. I think that to reiterate what Andrew said before, that the inclusionary zoning and affordable trust is one thing that we're doing to increase affordable housing in town and work to develop affordable housing throughout. It's part of an entire housing production plan, but it also proposes a lot of other neat things like 40R and mixed use development and all in-law apartments, and I forget the names, accessory dwelling units. That's the technical name. But so this is one tool in our toolbox. I would also say that with a 40B development, with a 25% affordable rate, they're all in one development as opposed to increasing economic diversity throughout the town. And by having an IZB which focuses on smaller 6-unit developments, we can really sort of increase the richness of the economic diversity throughout the town as opposed to just in a single development too. So it's a kind of a great tool to build that throughout our town.
Thank you. That's a very good answer. Thank you.
And Ted, that was a really good question. I think, everyone in Walpole wants more clarity from the select board, from the planning board about the plan. What's the plan to not, what's our position on 40B? So I appreciate you asking that. One thing I'll add before we go on to the queue is we do need a plan. And I think the select board and the planning board in the next few years are going to have to, they're planning to take two things up that are going to affect this kind of position of the town. One is a master plan rewrite. I believe I don't know if we have a member of the select board on this call right now, but I believe there's a master plan rewrite happening in the next year or so. Don't quote me on that. And there's going to be a committee formed, lots of public input, yada, yada. And then after that, once there's a master plan rewrite, there's going to be a comprehensive zoning rewrite. So to Ted's point, I do think there's a yearning with all this growth in town for more of a what's the plan, approach from our town leaders. And I hope we get that with those two big rewrites of zoning and the master plan. So that's my commentary. So I have Bill O'Connell. Yeah, I see you raise your hand again.
Thanks, Andrew. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks again for taking the time. Just with respect to the minimum lot size provisions, I just want to understand. So basically, does the zoning board have the discretion to actually reduce, for example, in a general residence zone where a multifamily might not be currently allowed? Are you saying that this bylaw will basically waive that requirement, so potentially a multifamily unit can go anywhere in town? No?
Nope, that's a really important distinction, because under 40B, that is the case.
Yeah.
Multifamily development, the single family home I live on in Washington could be torn down and 50 units can be put there. Under IZB, it can only go where it's currently allowed.
Okay.
So there's no change in the use provisions. That's really important that
Yeah.
people understand.
Yeah.
So
Again, with the caveats that the lot can be reduced by 50% for it, or is it only in that district that where a home is a home is allowed or a multifamily is allowed? I'm just trying to understand the reduction of 50%.
Oh, and the dimensional waivers?
Yeah.
So yeah, Bill, just to clarify this, to Ashley's point, the uses, particularly with multifamily, does not change by zone. If we pass an inclusionary zoning bylaw, where you can build multifamily is where you can build multifamily. That's not going to change. The GR, and then with mixed use in residential B and CBD, that's the current areas of town where you can build multifamily. But to your point about how the dimensional waiver works, that 50% reduction on in the lot size requirement it sounds big. It sounds like, whoa, a 50% lot size reduction. And let's take the GR as an example. If there's a 6-unit project in the GR, and the 50% lot size reduction applies to that 1 unit of the 6 that is supposed to be affordable, the math, as Ashley showed in this example earlier, that 50% lot size reduction really is more of a modest, it's spread across all 6 units. So all the units still have to have the same lot. They can't be any different legally. The affordable unit can't be smaller. It can't be 50% smaller. So all the minimum lot sizes shrink a little bit, like 6-7%, something like that. Does that make sense, Ashley? What I answered?
Yeah, and so we just started talking about the 50% part. So we're talking about single family development, and it's a 75% lot reduction if you're not using septic, and a 50% lot reduction if the units are to be on septic, and that's to make sure there's enough land for the septic system to go in. But
right. So just as a follow-up, yep.
Yeah.
Sorry. So as a follow-up, if let's say a developer wanted to allocate 2 or 3 units for affordable housing, would they be able to use this 50% lot size reduction for each unit?
No, that's a fantastic question. That came up, and through one of the sessions, we got feedback that it wasn't clear enough. So we added language to say that the lot reduction is only for the required affordable housing units. So some benevolent developer couldn't come in and say, oh, I've got an acre of land. What's 43,560 divided by 7,500? Let's do this. Just for the required unit.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew.
Hey, great question, Bill. And again, I apologize to Robert. I know Robert's here, and he's going to. I'll get to Robert in just a second. I just want to get through the RTMs first. So thank you for your patience, Robert. Julie, I have next in line.
Okay. Can you hear me? I'm in my car now, so
yes.
It's probably a really dumb question, but is the inclusionary zoning bylaw, does that cover all residential zoning? Do you know if I were to look at the whole town of Walpole, or is it in certain sections. Do you know, I don't know if that makes sense, but it just covers townwide residential zoning, yes or no?
Yes, so there's no
Okay.
overlay associated with this,
Okay,
but there's no change in uses also.
okay, so somebody can't do what Summer Street's doing in the industrial zoned area and
Correct.
utilize inclusionary zoning to do it.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question, Julie. Any other questions from RTMs? I know Ron Ardeen, at one point I thought I saw you raise your hand, but if you have a question, Ron, unmute yourself or type it in.
I'm good.
You're good, great. Hey, thank you, Ron. Okay, so now, if no other RTMs have asked questions, I want to open it up to the public. I believe we have Robert. Yes, please.
Yes. Thank you, Andrew, for letting me speak. For all you out there, my name's Rob Truax. I live on Spring Street in the center of town, resident of Walpole. I'm also a principal owner of GLM Engineering Consultants in Holliston, and we do many projects in the town of Walpole. I have a few questions on, number one, the area requirement of this unit. And if Ashley could put her demonstration up of the 16 unit count that she had, I just want to understand how that works. Because she's showing 14 units could be developed under a conventional plan, which would require 2 affordable. And so is the developer getting an additional 2 units on top of the 14? Or is he losing 2 and going back to 12 market rate and 2 affordables? That formula is written so it shows 14 plus 2 with a total of 16.
Ashley, would you like me to put that example up on the screen again?
Do you know which slide he's talking about?
Yes, I believe I do. I'm going to pull it up right now, and you can tell me if this is right.
Yes, that's the one.
Mm-hmm.
So under that, Ashley, you're saying under conventional base yield, the developer would get 14 units, correct? And you're saying the affordable requirement is 2. And when you go through the formula, you're showing a total unit count of 16. So if I do a conventional subdivision and I can get 14 lots at 30,000 square feet, I can get 2 additional to build the affordables. Is that what we're saying in this bylaw?
Yeah, this is the density bonus.
So you get a density bonus.
But
So if I
it's
could build 14 houses on 30,000 square feet, according to my math, that's 420,000 square feet of area I need for 14 houses. If that's all the area I have to build 14 units, and then I take your 26,250, can I still build 16 units under that 400,000? 420,000?
I need to see numbers for them to show up in my brain in a meaningful way. And I don't know exactly what your question is, but basically you get to, the way it works is you build the 2 units. You need 15,000 square feet to build the 2 affordable units.
15,000.
Yeah, but it's averaged out. So all the lots actually end up to be the same size.
When I do the math, when I do 14 times 30 plus 2 times 7,500, I get an average lot area of 27,187.
Is the math wrong on this line? That's embarrassing if it is.
Well, and then if I take the 27,000 and I multiply it by 16, I get 435,000 square feet. And if I only have 420,000 square feet to build my 14 units, I'm not going to have enough area to get that extra unit.
Yeah, so your math is right. This is, I pulled from an old example and I must have done it for 14 units and then added in the density. But basically you get, you for 15,000 square feet, you get the 2 affordable units. This is something our consultant put together, and
it doesn't, the numbers still don't work.
So,
Let's say, well, let me just give you the example. So if I have 14 lots and I'm in the 30,000 square foot zone, and
yeah.
every lot is 30,000 square feet, That's a total of 420,000 square feet of land area that I can use to build my houses.
Yeah.
I would be required to do 2 units.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying I get those as a bonus. So if I do that math and I get 27,187 required for each lot, that comes out to 435,000 square feet. I am shy 15,000 square feet to build those extra 2 units. I don't have enough land to get those 2 units. I won't get that bonus. I'll have to go back to the 14. I don't get a bonus of 2 lots doing that math.
So
It doesn't work.
if you're doing a project under the IZB, then you would need to develop a project that could work under the IZB in order to get the units onto the SHI.
All right, so then you're really not giving someone 2 extra
You
units.
have a lot that's 420,000 square feet on the nose.
I'm just saying the numbers don't work.
Well, I think
I
so.
don't think that's
It's a you're trying to give someone a bonus and it doesn't necessarily, it might not necessarily work.
So
So they might not get 16 units. They might only get 14.
Robert, if I may jump in here, the point is that the square footage of the minimum lot required is reduced, right? It went from 30,000. Even if your math is right, it's still 27,000. Went down from 30,000, and so you can shoot. I mean, her example in this slide talks about a 435,000 square foot site, right? That's the example she uses to start with. Say you have that land. So the math issues aside, and we can take this offline, the point is it went from 30,000 as a minimum square foot required for the lot to 26 or 27.
27. But you know what, Andrew, I'm trying to figure out what the advantage is for a developer to reduce his lots from 30,000 to 27,000 if he's not getting a bonus.
It depends on the site size to begin with. You use 420. This example uses 435. The point is just as an example that the square footage is reduced. And in some cases, it can mean you can have more units.
You're not going to get 14 units on a 10-acre site like that because you need to build your road. And your road,
also add that there are waivers for. Sorry, I just want to make this point really quickly. There are waivers for your setbacks. There are waivers for your usable open space. There are waivers for frontage. So there's a whole kind of mixture of things that go into this.
but every waiver is discretionary to the zoning board, correct? It's to their discretion. It's not a matter of right.
Not the lot size waiver.
Not the lot size waiver, but the setbacks, the frontage, all those waivers are discretionary, and it's not a matter of right for the developer. Correct?
It's at the discretion of the ZBA because the part of the goal of this is to make sure that projects are, if you just gave blanket waivers without a public review process, you would be cutting people. Like, there's by right zoning where, okay, you can do all of these things and not have to have a public review process. And then there are projects that neighbors have a right to be a part of that process. And so ZBA is there to kind of review these projects and to review them to make sure that they're appropriate for the neighborhood.
So if I may too, my name's Courtney Starling. I work for Community Opportunities Group. I'm going to help explain the math on the density bonus slide for a second. The reason that it is not adding up on both sides to you is because you are looking at information from two different slides. So we're talking about two different points. What 1 through 5 covers is how we determine the total density bonus. The lot size equation at the bottom there is how we determine the minimum lot size. And so it's not going to be a perfect number that comes out to 435,000 square feet because we're only looking at what the minimum is after it averages out. The other point that you make about the fact that we haven't considered the construction of roadways, we also didn't include wetlands, uplands, or anything like this. It's just a simple math kind of model. And so that part of the confusion that you have is that you were looking at two related but separate things. And so that's why it looks a little why it's a little bit more difficult to wrap your kind of understand what's happening in that slide. I actually do have a spreadsheet where I ran the model on a bunch of different size developments too, so that we could look at what what the impacts would be, not just in the size, 10-acre project, and not just a 15-acre project, and not just in Res A. What would this look like in different zones? And so I can forward that to Andrew and have that information made available too. It's been a while since we've talked about it, but we did go through, there's actually we went through some fairly extensive work on this, and I can just forward it to Andrew and make it available for everybody else. Thank you, guys.
So can you, one more question, Ashley, on the density bonus. Where does it actually state that in Article 19 that you get a bonus? Is it under Section 6 under special provisions for affordable units?
Yeah, and I think Andrew can pull up the text so we can all look at it.
Yes.
Or did I overcommit you? I think you mentioned that earlier.
No, I can do that. Just give me 1 second.
I will also say that it was somewhat of a deliberate choice to use the words dimensional waiver instead of density bonus, because density bonuses and development tend to be based on, you're doing 10 units, you get an extra unit, it's a flat number. And we didn't want people to think that there was no tie to the land itself that development would occur on and the conditions of those lots. We were a little concerned about whether or not it would give a different impression than how the full bylaw works together. So that you won't see it as explicit, but that the effect of it is a density bonus.
This, if I'm sharing my screen correctly, this is just Section 6A, the special provisions. Is that where you wanted me to go, Ashley?
That's the right place.
Oh, I was muted.
So can you read that, Ashley, and tell me how that states that you get a waiver for density? I don't read that when I read that section. I don't get that out of it.
So the density bonus comes in by reducing the amount of land required so you could put more units on less land.
But if I
The
was
bonus is written into the words shall require only 25 or may be reduced by 50%. That's where the bonus is. It's in the actual text. It's in the lines. It's not written as a header.
But I don't see where that would say that if I had a 6-lot or a 14-lot subdivision, that I would take the 2 as additional.
That's because there's a formula in here, and so you would have to do the math based on the actual lot size to figure out what your bonus is going to be. Like I said, we didn't base it on the number of units, we based it on the land. And so that is, that's a different calculation than just flat out, if you're doing X number of units, you get 2. If you're doing X number of units, you get 3 bonus units.
I just don't think that reads real clear to say that. I've had a few people look at this, and every time we've read it, we've taken, if we had 14 units and we're required to do 2, then the market rate would be 12 and the affordable would be 2, and that's how we would punch it into the formula.
Yeah, I mean, it's a balance between what is the most obvious and what is the one of our biggest priorities was to ensure that not only were we putting together a desirable vehicle for developers to use locally to permit via, not to say one is better than 40B or otherwise, but to provide an attractive option. But this bylaw is written, with the town. It's written from the perspective of the town as the beneficiary. And so being that the town is the beneficiary, we're really looking for housing that is appropriate and will fit into the neighborhood. And so it's really so much more tied to the land itself than actual just flat numbers of, you have 10 units that you want to build and go for it. And so while it is more difficult it's less straightforward, from a direct upfront perspective, it is also more nuanced and more better development. So on the one hand, it's more complicated. On the other hand, it is more tied to your actual land so that you don't end up with overbuilt development under your local bylaws.
Yeah, I just don't read that there's benefit to get an additional unit above the current units that you can build under the underlying zoning. I don't read that in this section. I'm not reading it the same as you calculated, Ashley. I just don't read it that way. And
Okay,
I asked
Robert.
someone-
Well, Robert, we can work with you offline on like your
Okay,
specific
that's fine.
example. Yeah, I would love to, follow up in terms of, if you have a parcel in mind and like.
No, I don't, Andrew. I do a lot of work in town. I live in town. I just, I'm curious.
Great.
I'm concerned. I do believe in affordable housing, and I do think 40B is an avenue to do it. And, I've seen other towns use 40B to get their quota. But I mean, obviously, this is just another avenue. Another question on the process. If Ashley could just walk through the process one more time, what the process would be for permitting under this? I know you said it's a special permit, but what happens to the actual subdivision control law and going before the planning board? Does that get bypassed?
Hello?
Hear you, Ashley. Go ahead.
Buddy. So this creates a special permit. So the zoning board is given if town meeting votes to adopt this, the zoning board can grant waivers as if they do under comprehensive permit applications.
So any project that falls under this, with the creation of 6 lots or more, would fall under this. So every project with 6 lots or housing units or more would fall under this zoning board's purview going forward. There'd be no more planning board subdivision control. We wouldn't do a subdivision under the subdivision control law under the planning board.
So are you asking how we're not in conflict with subdivision?
I'm asking, well, if I'm doing a 6-lot subdivision,
Yeah.
and I gotta go for a special permit to go through this zoning, does that mean I don't have to go through the planning board process as well? That step's no longer required for a subdivision?
Courtney, I know we talked about this like a year ago and I forget the exact.
Okay, so I'm not entirely sure I understand the question. Insofar, does this change local process as to if you're going to file a subdivision? Do you still need to file a subdivision? The answer is yes. This is a process that runs in tandem with the existing regulations. So whatever process you're going to normally follow, this is just another one that it's another special permit that would be required. Insofar as the issues with subdivision control, the planning or the ZBA has the discretion to waive lot size, and the applicant has the ability to ask for a lot size waiver. So it is something that they are asking for, but it is not mandated that that it is received. And so that's part of the special permit condition as well. And so if you want a reduced lot size, you can ask for the special permit, but either way, you're doing the affordable housing.
Okay, so you have to go through both processes.
Yeah,
Okay.
the same
Makes
as you would
sense.
file with any other project. It's the same filing. It's just it's an additional requirement.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. That was a good answer.
Thank you, Robert. Any other questions from those on the call? I'm just being conscious of both the time and the dwindling participants numbers, but I do believe that every minute we spend at this meeting, we probably shave 30 seconds off of town meeting. And I think that's in person. And so for safety reasons, as well as just for respecting people's time, this has been very productive, but any other questions?
So if there aren't, Andrew, I forwarded you a screenshot of that slide that I said that I would bring up.
I see that. Want me to pull it up?
If that's not too much trouble, I just trying to follow through on my word. So I found the slide.
No problem. I'm pulling it up right now. Give me 1 second.